Welcome to The Truth and That's Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I'm privileged to be in conversation with a Venezuelan-American actor, director, and producer. Their latest project, Safe Word, is a quirky, queer, psychological drama about the paralyzing tension between self-loathing and love. Please welcome Mauricio Pita. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
What a really nice introduction.
Well, thank you. I've had some people say, look, I'm just going to take this part of the podcast and use it for my reel.
Exactly.
So before we get too embedded into the conversation, I want to start off with something that either is paralyzing or that is very opening. Tell us about your story. Tell us about the introductory story. What's that sort of elevator pitch, if you will? Who is Mauricio Pita? Give us the rundown, please.
Wow, Mauricio Pita is somebody who is a Latino queer man who struggles with mental health and loves making art and connecting with people. I grew up in Caracas, Venezuela, in 1985.
You too? Yeah.
Oh, you too? Oh, that's
yeah.
See, no, yeah. And I moved to the U.S. in 2002. So I've been in the country for 20 years. And I moved to Connecticut, then went down to New York City, went to school in New York City, went to school for acting. And I was doing a lot of music. And then I moved to DC about 5 years ago. And that is the super short version. A lot of stuff happened in between. And of course, I'm going to probably get into it. But that's the elevator pitch idea, right?
I appreciate that. Sometimes I troll people and say, poorly describe what you do. And they're like, I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, my example would be, I talk to people who are smarter than me all the time.
Well, I don't know about that, but if I had to describe myself describe what I do poorly, I would say I make stories up. And I somehow put other pieces of art together to help tell those stories. I don't know. I make stuff up. I'm a liar, basically.
You know what? That's great, actually. That's one of those things when, because as we were talking about a little bit, where more of this networking stuff comes in, that actually is an interesting way to describe it. I remember, and I've referenced this before, the Austin Kleon book, Still Like an Artist, and he would talk about just different people. I remember there was, I think, a David Bowie quote, and he was like, I'm just a tasteful thief. Yeah. And that right there is oh, this is interesting. Tell me more. But if someone comes and say, oh, I'm an actor, I'm in theater, it's like, I'm a liar. I make believe for a living.
Yeah. And there's truth in all of that. There's truth in lying, right? As an actor. Another thing is everybody has a different idea of what an actor is. Yeah. And a different approach. And in my career, I've learned that, imagination, which is the idea that you believe so truthfully in a circumstance, in something, allows you to become a really good liar. I like to describe, I have a really difficult time actually describing the type of art that I do or who I am as an artist, because I can't put myself in a single category. If I say that I'm an actor, a lot of people will imagine that my life is going from audition to audition and that sort of, and I had that, I lived that life at one point, but I think now, it's a little different.
Sure.
I'm curating my own stories. I'm commissioning work with collaborators. I find myself devising a lot of work. And so I call myself an actor, but it's not in the traditional sense, I think. And so calling myself a liar is it's provocative in a way. I don't know. This is the first time I call myself that, by the way. So
absolutely it is, though. And you should use that. So I want to talk about some of those early inspirations. What drew you to acting, to acting, but more so the whole production side of things, acting, producing, directing, and ultimately this is the short film we're going to talk about in a bit. So what drew you to that initially?
I wanted to live a life that was different from the one that I was living.
Sure.
And that was the thing that really drew me to the performing arts in general. When I was, I grew up in Venezuela, and there, I guess the environment that I grew up in, I grew up in a really loving home. Like, it's nothing to say about my parents. Like, my parents were really loving people, but I was bullied a ton, like daily in school. Like, it was torture. And I would have to deal with that. I went to a school that I went to the same school from elementary all the way to high school. Like, it was the same building with the same classmates.
Same bullies.
Same bullies. You
Yeah.
absolutely right. I dealt with that the entire life. So I fantasized. And so I would live in my imagination. I would come home and I remember playing music and pretending that I was Britney Spears. I'm just being completely honest here. Or Leonardo DiCaprio and all these like movie stars that I was watching, and pop stars and all these famous people. And I felt like they were living this amazing life.
Yeah.
And so I started to really get into the idea of, okay, like, this is not real. This is an imagination. This is all imagination. And so there's a career path where I get to imagine and I get to play and I get to be other people and I get to escape my own troubled, experiences. That's really what drew me into it. And then I had a couple of teachers who kind of noticed that. I had one specific teacher when I was like 10 years old who was doing it was like a music teacher, and he did like a auditioning class for a like singing competition for middle school or elementary school. Actually, it was like fifth grade, and he picked me, and then sort of curated. We started to rehearse something, and then I started to develop a relationship with the art itself, and the way to produce that art. And I thought that was. I felt like there was a path that way. And then one thing led to another. And I received a lot of support from my parents. I have to say, like, both my parents, they never questioned, like, they never said to me, well, how are you going to make a living doing that? Or they never said to me, like, oh, you know what? You should really think about doing like computer science or like something else that I actually was interested in too. Like, I was interested in doing other stuff too. But they always pushed me to do the thing that they saw me the happiest.
That's great. That's great to have that around, have, people who are close to you, family, parents, that are more important. Because, I don't talk about this often there, but I mean, despite me being a large and intimidating person in person, I had the bullying thing because, or being bullied rather, because I was into some of the geekier stuff. I was into some of the weirder stuff, and you don't fit in. And it's like, being a, black kid or what have you. Oh, you got to do this, this, and this. But it's like, yo, I'm into wrestling and like anime, and I like to record conversations. And, that's kind of what that is. And having some degree, like, as I got older, where my parents were like, I'm not sure if I understand it, but I'm not going to reject it. I support it. Like, I support, what you're going to do. Right. And, being able to do both. Like, I pursued business, but always in the back. And it's like the Austin Kleon thing when they talk about when you sell off pieces of yourself, you had that phantom limb syndrome. Like, I still want that. That's what I came back to doing this. And even doing art, I do a comic book. And, I still have that business foundation, kind of what we were talking about earlier, that you can still navigate while still creating. And it's hard work. It's long hours and doing some of the things that we all do as creatives. So filmmaking, theater, production, performing arts, long hours, hard. Let's talk about finding your why, and let's talk about what keeps you motivated.
I feel like I have no choice. It was one of those things where just like, one thing that I do have is that I am very persistent, and I really do not give up easily on, if I want something, I go all the way until I get it, even in a self-sacrificing way. Like, like sometimes I sacrifice a lot of, there were times where I was not seeing my family for a long time, but it's just because I had that ambition and that goal and that idea. And so like that determination is something that I kind of kept me going. And there were times in episodes and chapters of my life where I just had to take a break from art making in a way because I needed to survive, or I needed to, get a job somewhere, like primarily those are the things, right? And like you're saying, there was something missing.
Yeah.
And something that always pulls you back, and you just go, yeah, you can try to do this, you can try to do this other path, but you know that that's not authentic to who you really are.
Yeah.
And you just have to listen to your gut and say, listen, if my spirit is fulfilled by doing this thing, then the sacrifices that you make hurt less. Like, they don't hurt as much. Like, for me, when I'm producing Safe Word, right? Like, in this process of producing Safe Word and starring in it and doing fundraising for it and marketing and doing all of these things for it, like, it doesn't feel like a job.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It feels like I'm taking care of my baby, of my child, of my spirit, of my soul, right? Like, it just feels different. And I found myself like working part-time at an office somewhere feels like torture, right? Feels like, oh, my soul, like, in a way for me. And so, and then as you get older, as I got older, I'm just going to speak from my own experience. You learn to sort of find the balance, right? Like, you can't always be making art because art has to be funded and has to be organized, and you have to get people to see it. And so you have to learn business. You have to utilize the experiences of working and administrating and budgeting and doing all of the things that come with those experiences. So it all comes together at the end, but it's hard. The motivation is telling that story. I have to tell that story. I have to do it,
And I think it's important to be able to share what goes on under the creation of the art, under that finished product. And I think it's a disservice when people just, this, I was blessed and then it happened.
No,
that's not how it goes. And I think I make an effort when I do these interviews with folks of, I want to know about the work, but I also want to know about the person, because that's what's underlying it. It's just like, Mauricio might love peanut butter. It might love, like, look, I need this peanut butter sandwich while I'm working. This is what keeps me recharged. And, I have a special thank you at the end of this film to Jiffy or what have you. I need to know why that happened. So if you will, since it's a really good spot for us to talk about, because you mentioned it, tell us about Safe Word. And I have a second bullet point for it, but I want to start off there. Give us the rundown, please.
Safe Word is the story of Cesar. Cesar is a masochist, somebody who self-loathes, and he is seen. I'm just telling you a little bit about the plot. He's seen a dom, somebody who has a relationship with, and the rules change halfway through the film of what their role play is, and it forces Cesar to confront the self-loathing in order to keep the relationship going. And so the film started with a desire to talk about the conflict that exists internally with my own introduction to the idea of self-love. And so let me just clarify that a little bit. When dealing with depression and sort of like that, my mental health, and when I started to go to therapy for it years ago, a new positive voice was sort of getting introduced. Mm-hmm. And instead of just being like, okay, now everything is amazing, like I have this amazing positive voice that I can rely on, what ended up happening is that I ended up having an argument with myself constantly, because I had the negative voice that would say, you're not good enough, you're worthless, all of these things. And then you had the new positive voice coming in and interjecting and going, no, actually, factually, you're this and this and this. And so I would have an argument with myself. And so I brought up the idea of making a film about that specific conflict, that battle, to a dear friend, Eva von Schweinitz, who lives in New York. And I worked with her devising theater while I was living in New York. And I just sent her some journal entries about that kind of conflict. And then she came up with the original story concept of this two people who are in a relationship. And the character of Bear, who is the other character in the film, is sort of like an externalization of my inner voices, right? That's why he switches the rules of the game. He goes, actually, what about this? And then the character goes, I don't know what to do with that. Like, no, you're lying to me. This is not true. What's going on, right?
Right.
And then Christopher Cunetto came, who I've worked with also a few times, was fantastic, like an amazing. He's like an incredible visual artist and filmmaker and writer, and he's local. He's a DC local filmmaker. I brought up the film to him. I brought up the script to him, and I said, "Would you like to take the lead in this as a director?" And he jumped in, and he helped fine tune the script, make it a little bit closer to me, and so that's kind of the story of Safe Word, and that's why it came about. And it's been a really healing process, and it's also been extremely difficult because it's very meta in a way. Because through it, while I'm producing it and I'm acting in it, I kept asking myself, like, the voices, of course, come back. Like, the negative voices come in my head. And so I just go, this is really a dangerous thing. And at any moment, I feel like I could just say, this is too much for me. Like, I can't handle this.
Right.
And am I going to use the safe word, meaning I quit at any moment, right?
Yeah.
And so I kept saying to myself, my voices are saying you need to stop doing this, you need to run away, and I need to do the opposite. I need to keep going. I need to do the opposite of what they're saying to me, what my own inner negative voice is saying to me. And so this is why we're going all the way.
I love
going all the way. To challenge that narrative that I've made about myself, in the hopes that other people, when they watch it, identify themselves, find things that, like, I doubt that I'm the only person in the world who feels that way. And I hope that the film builds that kind of community and opens up that conversation.
That's great. I think we get to these spots, and thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I think we get to these spots where we have something that overrides what our impulse is, what that negative self-talk might be. And, you know, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, you know, having ambition, I always joke, like, I'm running off of ambition and spite, you know, it's just
That's
that.
right.
And, you know, when it gets to a spot of when I'm stretching outside of that comfort zone, that's when I know that the naysayer is there, when I know that negative self-talk is there. And there have been a few times where I have these somatic responses of, okay, I'm about to do some, like, I can do this. This is easy, right? But if I'm doing this same sort of thing, just talking to people, but I'm doing it on stage, I'm sweating, I got migraines, it's just a mess. And it's something telling me, oh, get off, you're going to fail, hurry up and bomb, you know, and do all of that. And I choose the other thing. I choose just to do it. And I choose to make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my therapist said something to me that really, like, stuck with me. It's sort of like, I kept saying to him, like, I wish I was fearless. I wish I was one of those people who was fearless, right? And he was just like, that's denying a part of your humanity. Like, fear is an emotion that is extremely human. Yeah. And so fear's not going to go away. Like, I'm not going to stop being afraid, right? But it's about doing the things that I dream about in spite of being afraid of them. Right? Yeah. Like, me producing a film and committing to it and putting money into it and asking people for their support and putting myself in a really vulnerable position in many layers. Yeah. It's something that my brain says, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't go there. Like, if you fail and your career might be destroyed. I mean, like, that's literally like what my brain is saying, right? And you just have to go and say, no, you know what? I have to do it. I have to do it thank you, brain. Mm-hmm. Thank you for trying to protect me.
Yeah.
But if I stay in the comfort zone, I'm never going to grow. I'm not going to reach my dreams. I'm not going to accomplish the goal. So I have to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. And safe word is that. Yeah. It's literally that. It's that. And of course, it's sexy, and it's like all of the other things that I love, and you have to give something to the gays. I mean, just kidding.
That's great. Give the people what they want, damn it.
But it's so funny because, like, sometimes when I was, like, pitching the movie to, like, donors and fundraisers, we're really going in here. I was like, oh my God, people are going to think that this is a very sexual film. It's really not. Like, it's really not, because the word safe word and like, you know, a dom and a sub and all of that. And it's like, underneath all of that, it's somebody who really wants to love, who really wants to find love, and you know, and underneath all of it is a deeper story. And but I was just like, but sex is good. Like people need to watch this, you know. So it's like finding that right balance between like, how do I make sure that donors know that I'm not just like producing something that's like crazy pornographic or something. It's not like that. I promise, it's not that.
But I think that's a thing that, you know, in terms of like media that we've gotten really weird with, we've regressed in some regards or what have you. And I'm not doing that, you know, full segue that could go on for hours, but I think that we have regressed, and really it's like at the root of it, what is the story? And you've described it. And I think if people aren't able to see that, then they're doing themselves a disservice, if we're being honest here.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's sort of like you can't look at something with at face value. You have to be curious enough to know that there is something more underneath it, and hopefully people will find it and see it. It's there. But in general, with every project, right? Like, you know, right now we're doing a lot of like work in terms of like marketing materials and all of that. And at that point, you just have to go and like, do I reveal the substance of the film and the marketing materials, or I just let it exist for what it is and let people discover it when they see it? And so like those are questions that I always ask myself as I produce work. It's sort of like, how much do I want to like tell people, and how much do I want to hide, so that way they're surprised, like pleasantly surprised, that this movie is about the human condition and what we do to ourselves when we have hated ourselves for so long, you know? So anyway, I don't know. I do know.
No, you do.
I do know.
100% you do. So, and I know that I encounter this, and I think when we have skin in the game, whether it's, you know, the time investment, the financial investment, the, you know, the equity, you're calling in those chips, like, hey, man, come on out, man, come onto my show. How do you know when to cut bait on something when it's like not working? Like when you feel like this isn't, when you get the real, not even the naysayer, when you're like, there's a lot of things going against this right now. Because I struggle with that on occasion, where I try to do everything. I've been riding this wave of not saying no, right? And being able to stretch for opportunities. And some are just like, this doesn't fit. This doesn't fit my life configuration. Or, you know, what sort of test, if you will, that you run to make sure things are running congruent to what you value? And when do you kind of like cut bait?
For me, it's that I really argue with myself, and then I just, at the end of it all, you just have to trust your gut. Like, to me, is gut, instinct. If something doesn't feel like right, I think that's the thing about art. It's subjective. There's no formula, and you just have to go with your gut. And you also have to listen to other people. It is not an isolated process for me. I like to collaborate. A reason why I like to collaborate is because other people can also push things forward, where if I was just doing it alone, I would quit before everyone else. But having the responsibility of taking care of other people and collaboration can sort of give you that sort of like, it's not just me. There's other people involved in this, and they also have a say. But you know, like, I think in your gut, you know when something is, when you just have to go, nope, not working, right? And then you have those big debates, right? Like with your team, with your collaborators, if you have collaborators, right? I like to show work to people who I trust, even though it's an incomplete process, just so I can get feedback. And questions. I like people to ask me questions about the art itself, because it makes me think. I don't want necessarily people to give me the answers, but just make me think and let me come up with my own answers. And then, but the magic thing is that when you know it's right, you know it's right. Yeah. When something works, you know as well. And so that's why gut.
Yeah. I ride the hot streak when I step outside of what I kind of do, of like, oh, this is centered in Baltimore, this is centered in DMV, and so on. But when I say I'm going to go here, and I did a series of interviews in Texas, And I kind of struggle with, and I asked, kind of the same approach, like, all right, this isn't out yet. I want to get a temperature on, does this make sense? Should I do it in this way? Should I separate it from the main feed? And one of the pieces of advice that he gave me, and I kind of apply this to what I do now, it's more of a confidence sort of thing and more of a informative sort of thing. It's just like the people that dig what you do, they trust you. So if you're saying this is the lane and this is what you're doing, they're going to ride along with you. And and those who don't, that's just what that is. So now when I pitch ideas, I say it with my chest into it, with some confidence of this is what I'm going to do. I can tell you why. I can tell you what's the thinking behind it, but it's very much my idea, my unique perspective, and really valuing that, because who can do what I do? The same as you. Who's going to have your perspective and those experiences that are baked into your work?
And you also know, like, I mean, from in my experience, it's also like when I know that something, if I have the conviction and the confidence to believe in a project, right? Like, say if it is something that I knew I believed in from the beginning, right? And it felt really personal to me. And I know that I had a lot of negative voices coming in my head about logistics, like money and time and schedule and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. The insecurity was that I was never insecure about the story.
Right. So
if I had that one thing as an anchor that was grounding me, there was no way to deter me from doing it. Right. So the pitch became about like, no, I believe in this and this is why I believe in this. And then people perceive that, and they don't, like you said, they don't know. They're not in it. They don't have the same sort of input. And so they trust you and they believe in you. And so I always found this is actually a really healing process, this whole filmmaking, because the people who support you, sometimes you just go like, oh, like fundraising, asking for money, like who's going to support it? Who's going to do that? And then people start to show up and you just go, oh, it's a big, slap to those voices in your head, right? It sort of says, you were lying to me this whole time. Look at this evidence now. And then now in the future, then I have now I'm going to age myself here. A Rolodex of of evidence that says no. Yeah. It's a lie. Yeah. It's a lie.
That's great. We're on the same page here. We're speaking the same. It's that 85. It's that 85 right there. Speaking the same language.
Yeah, it's at 85.
So I think that's a good spot for us to stop on the real questions. And I want to throw out some quick rapid fire questions for you because, we like to peel the onion back even further. So this is going to be ridiculous. I'm just letting you know. Okay. I'm going to throw out a softball though. All right. What is something you regularly have for breakfast?
Fried eggs.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Protein is good. Yeah.
I have spite. I have spite for breakfast. A nice bowl of spite with whole milk.
Nice.
If you could be an animal for a day, which animal would it be?
My own dog. To be honest with you, it's a really amazing life.
It's like you just keep winning, don't you, Pooch?
He sleeps, plays, has good food, has somebody who loves him. It's great.
It's a good trade. It's like the Shaggy dog, right? It's a Venezuelan Shaggy dog situation. Yes. What is the best piece of fashion advice you've ever received?
Ooh, best piece of fashion advice. My mom used to say to me from Coco Chanel, take one thing off before you go out, like an accessory or something.
That's great. That's great.
Sometimes I wear like an earring and a necklace and a bracelet and a ring, and I go, that's too much. Just take one off. You're good.
I like to wear like bandanas now as my partner, my girlfriend will make fun. She's like, you're going into this phase. She's like, tiny glasses, big scarf. You've been around too many artists. And I'm like, look, I was like, can I live for 5 minutes? What?
I don't wear a lot of patterns. Yeah. I like to wear like simple, like black, red, simple colors, because I don't like to think too much about matching and like what works and doesn't work. And so I just wear like neutral. So I guess that's another piece of advice, but no one gave me that. I just came up with that.
I'm going into this phase where I want to just Steve Jobs it a little bit, where I'm just going to buy all black Carhartt, wear the Doc Martens, and then wear ridiculous like necklaces and goofy jewelry. I have I have a piece of handmade jewelry. It's a 2-finger ring, but it's the Hokusai Great Wave off of Kanagawa. Cool. And the last few times I've gone to like a gallery or something, so I was like, where the hell did you get that ring from? I was like, oh, I had somebody make this. And I was like, oh, snap, I just did the art thing.
No, but that's great because you look, you see what you did? You just have like very neutral, like sort of like a blank canvas, and then you have a conversation piece. So you have something to start the conversation, and everything else is just there to exist. Yes. I don't like to think too much about what I do in terms of like clothing. And I was saying yesterday to a colleague, sorry, I'm getting into it, that I actually do love fashion. Like I love fashion. I just don't like to think about it too much when it comes to myself.
100%. 100%. Yes. I'll throw out this last one. I remember I was growing my hair at the beginning of the pandemic, and my girlfriend was like, so are you just going for the Lester Holt thing or what? Because she was like, I see it slicked back now. And I was like, look, just stop it. She was like, if that's what you're doing, I like it. You know, you like it. I love it. I was like, I don't love it. Your
girlfriend questions your choices a lot. I just have to say,
she's a theater person. She's just
that's why.
She's just like, what are you doing? What's happening here? So this is the last rapid fire question I got. So I've heard several artists of various disciplines describe copying or stealing or being influenced, if you will. Who do you steal from? Who are your influences, and what do you steal from them? Like, name one or two of them.
Oof. You know, I was thinking about that. That's hard. I don't. I would say I have close collaborators. I don't necessarily. Well, I do steal from them. I steal from all of them. I actually really admire this local artist. I'm sure you know who he is. Somayene24. If he listens to this interview, he's going to freak out because he's a good friend of mine. I love his art. I love what he does. I love what he does. He has the audacity to create work that is just truthful, honest, personal, and goes all the way. And I've worked with him, and I steal from him. In terms of like famous people, it's kind of tough. Like I was Robin Williams is somebody who I really admired growing up. I thought that he was like the most versatile and talented actor out there. Yeah. And so I really, really admire him. But Somayene24 has been one of the biggest influences career-wise for me. And I've only known him for like 5 years. So yeah.
That's legit. Thank you. So with that, I want to close out. I want to thank you for being on this podcast, and I want to invite and encourage you. Here's the shameless pitch, the same shameless plug portion of the podcast. Find folks about Safe Word, where to find it, where to check it out, website, which is a great website, by the way. So shout out to you on that. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So Safe Word, you can learn about Safe Word by going to safeword.film. And you can learn about my company, my production company, by going to Tepui, that's TEPUI media.com. We're going to have a press screening on November 16th at Gala Hispanic Theater. You can just go to the Tepui Media website and reach out to us there. And then it's going to go into the film festival circuit. So it'll be in a city close to you.
I like the way you said that.
Yes.
So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Mauricio Pita, Safe Word, for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, performance, creativity in and around your neck of the woods. You just got to look for it.